All right, hello everybody. We'll go ahead and get started with today's presentation. As we go through, if you have questions, send them in using the question and answer box in the Zoom interface. Do not send them via chat. Send them via Q&A. I will be answering questions today at the end of the presentation, not as we go through. Um, I do expect there to be a lot of questions. This is my first time doing this presentation, so we'll see how this goes. There is going to be an encore, so I will do this again next week as well for those that have to drop out today or aren't able to attend, or if you have somebody else on your team who you think should probably see this. So we're talking about the big changes that are coming to Nebula. It's being advertised and it's going to be marketed as Nebula Together, kind of highlighting the fact that we're finally adding support for the USG Flex to Nebula. So you probably all saw the email that came out the end of February. If you're currently registered with Nebula and have ever played with Nebula, you were sent that email letting you know that changes were coming. I believe in that email, they highlighted March 29th as the date that the changes were going to take effect. So that has changed a bit. It's been pushed back 2 weeks. So it's now going to be April 10th, although depending on what material you look at, you may see April 11th. It's just has to do with time zone. So here in the US, April 10th is when these changes are going to go live. But again, you may see April 11th on official materials being put out. So the big changes that we have here are going to be support for the USG Flex, a new feature that we're calling secure Wi-Fi. It's an alternative to doing VPNs for remote workers. And then massive changes to the Nebula licensing. So today's presentation is mostly going to focus here on these changes to the licensing, since that's something that's going to affect you much more immediately than any of these other things will, especially when it comes to any projects or bids you're currently working on. Try is going to be doing a presentation, I think in 2 weeks, before this goes live, where he'll focus on the USG Flex. He'll talk about some of the changes that are going through and explain the features much more in depth and can answer more questions if you have any questions on the transition. We are going to have a program. So if you're currently using NSGs, we do have a trade-in program, I believe, that will be launched. Um, so you can upgrade to a USG Flex at a lower price. There's also the ability to migrate licenses from an NSG to a USG. And again, Try's presentation will be able to go more in depth onto how that's going to work. So one of the key things here, any USG Flex model will be able to be used with Nebula. If you buy the bundled USG Flex, the one that comes with the UTM services, it includes all of those services now in Nebula. So in the past, the NSGs had a slightly lesser feature set than the USGs when it came to UTM services. It now should be basically the same between the two: web filtering, IPS, application patrol, anti-malware, email, and SecuReporter. We've also got some cloud functionality built in there for you, something new called Security Profile Sync, which works only with Nebula, and collaborative detection and response. So we've got a quick little chart here sort of showing you what comes with if you're using it with Nebula versus using the standalone traditional method here. So you can see when it comes to the UTM services, that's now basically the same between these two modes, which one you're going to use. You will notice here the standalone includes hospitality management. So hotspot management is something that's built into Nebula. It's slightly different than the hotspot management that's in the standalone mode. So that's why there's no dot there. And if you do buy the bundled version that includes the UTM license, it will also include 1 year of Nebula Professional Pack along with it. And then going forward here, you can see the renewal options you've got. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Moving on here now to something new. This is our new secure Wi-Fi function. We've also in the past been referring to it as work from home. And the idea here is to allow people to work from home and be able to access their company network as if they were there in their company offices, but without having to have a dedicated VPN appliance or having to mess with VPN software to make those connections. Instead, what you're going to do is you are going to provide them a access point. At the moment, this is working only with our Wi-Fi 6 access points, specifically the 500 and 600 series. So there's 3 models of Wi-Fi 6 access point that will work with this when this launches in April. And basically, you give your remote worker the access point, you manage that access point through Nebula, and the access point itself will make a secure connection back to a USG Flex device and provide a secure tunnel. So they'll be connecting to the same SSID at work, the same security settings as if they were at the office. Um, so it's an easier way to do it. It does require a license to work. And you will notice on the slide here, it is coming to the ATP at some point. So it will be available, I think, at the ATP in April, I believe, for standalone mode. And then the ATPs will be coming to Nebula towards the end of the year. But for right now, for April, just the USG Flexes. Okay, so now that was kind of it for those 2 things. Again, if you want more, try his presentation is where to go. So now let's start talking about License 2.0. So a big question we run into is, why are we making these changes now? Nebula launched all the way back in, what was it, 2017, I think? And we were at the time the first SMB-based cloud system that was being provided out there. It was really focused on the SMB space. Aruba and Meraki were the other 2 big cloud providers, Aerohive. And they were really focused on the enterprise. So our licensing was defined back then, our licensing prices were set back then, and really nothing has changed over the years except for a small price increase a while back. So, you know, we were there before Meraki Go. We were there before Aruba's Instant On, or is it Aerohive Instant On? I might have made a typo there. But it's also, you know, we've seen a lot of lower end network providers also get into the cloud space. D-Link has Nucleus, Netgear has Insight, TP-Link has Omada, Datto has CloudTrax now. So all of these have come since then. So we need to sort of adapt our offerings to try to compensate for the fact that there's all these new competitors that weren't there before. Second thing is unification. The Nebula licensing platform has always been separate from the USG licensing platform. And so what we want to be able to do is combine these together into one licensing platform, so you have one unified place to go to be able to see your licenses, renew your licenses, and manage your customers. So as part of that change, we're needing to change the offerings because there's such differences between the 2 backends. And as we unify them together, we've had to make some changes into how the Nebula licensing works. This unification process is an ongoing process. It's not going to be fully complete until later this year, probably at the end of Q3, early Q4. But one of the things we want to do here at the end when this is fully integrated is be able to provide the option to do monthly billing based on what you're actually using. So that's something that's a goal that we're hoping to eventually reach. So for those of you that provide hardware as a service, you don't need to front load those licenses and pay for a year or more in advance. You can simply pay for them month by month based on how many devices you have deployed at that time. And then simplification. So we get a lot of confusion on our licenses, right? We've got different licenses for the APs versus the switches versus the security gateways. Everything is co-terminated by default. And the way that works is these licenses you buy a 1-year license, you apply the license, it actually gets converted into points and then distributed across all the other devices that are currently registered on that organization in Nebula. So that's long been a point of contention and issues and phone calls, people not understanding how that works, confusion and trying to figure out, oh, wait a minute, I've got, 10 devices now. If I add these 3 devices that come with 1 year each, what is my new expiration date going to be? So we've tried to simplify all of that. Whoops, jumped ahead of myself there, one more bullet. And then we're looking for a little bit more flexibility. Some of these changes here are going to make it easier for you to move devices between your customers' organizations. it also, more importantly, make it easier for you to move licenses, something that's really not an option right now with the current Nebula. So going forward, you'll easily be able to move your licenses from one of your managed customers to another one. So as somebody shrinks and somebody grows, you'll easily be able to handle that. All right, so let's go through some of this here. So this is what we have today, right? You've got 3 different licenses, 3 different price points you have to manage. So when you're plotting out your customer's deployment, you have to try to keep this all in mind. So starting April 10th here, we'll have just one Nebula Pro Pack license. 1 year, $29.99. So we've dropped the price so it's more affordable considerably, especially on the gateways, but also we've just made it easier for you. So you just need to know, okay, this customer is going to have 15 devices. I just need to buy 15 of this license. Done. Going along with this, our lifetime licenses, which the vast majority of you don't purchase, we are going to be phasing them out. So you will no longer, after April 10th, be able to purchase a lifetime license for any of your devices. However, stuff you've already deployed with lifetime will continue to stay on lifetime. It's just going forward, we won't be offering those anymore. It's something only a handful of customers have been using. So the other thing we've done here is we've added a new tier into our Nebula licenses. So the free version of Nebula is being renamed to Base Pack or just Base. Pro Pack remains Pro Pack. And now we've got this in between Plus Pack. So this is something that people came into, which was, I don't need all of these features that are in Pro Pack, but I need a little bit more than what's in Base. So we created this sort of in between license tier that's designed to compete with the low end, Netgears and TP-Link type cloud offerings. As far as price goes, and still offer you a good set of features here above and beyond what's included in the base pack. So just a little comparison here. So we're looking roughly, if you paid per month, $119 per month for the plus pack, $299 per month for the pro pack. Of course, as you buy more or prepay for more, the price goes down. So $11.99 for 1 year of plus pack versus $29.99 for 1 year of pro pack. 2 years is going to jump up to $22.99 for plus, $56.99 for the pro pack. So there is some benefit to buying more upfront. So we've got sort of the comparison matrix here. There are being some changes here. So the base pack or the free version of Nebula is mostly staying the same. Still an unlimited number of devices, an unlimited number of sites that you can manage. What's changing here is the logging information. It's going to only be 24 hours of log information. This is the performance data that you see when you log into Nebula and look at some of those charts and stuff we generate. Diagnostic information on the back end that our tech support uses if we're trying to help you troubleshoot a problem you're having, that will still remain at a week worth of information that's stored in the cloud for our back end guys to look at for troubleshooting purposes. And if you're using the built-in cloud authentication database, whether you're using it for users or you're using it for MAC filtering on the Wi-Fi side, it's going to drop to 50 entries from the 100 it's at now. And I think everything else is largely staying the same. The Plus Pack will bump up the user entries to 100. It'll get you the full 1 week of performance metrics that you can see in the GUI. And it's also going to be unlocking here for you the advanced firmware scheduling, the ability to set different schedules based on individual device or sites and organizations. It gets you access to the previous Pro Pack features, which were the automatic reporting that gets emailed, the ability to add your logo to that report so you can send it to your customer, the automatic topology view, email alerts, and the ability to use Wi-Fi vouchers, something which is primarily a European thing. It's for the hotspot functionality. And then Pro Pack is basically staying the same as what it was as far as the core features go. Some of the MSP tab, though, is going away. So for those of you that use the MSP tab, that will no longer be included as part of the Pro Pack. So basically the way licensing is going to work is it's per device based. So you will need a license for each device that's going to be on your network. And basically it defaults to whatever the lowest common denominator is. So all of your devices need to have at least that level of licensing. So if you want to do ProPack, all devices need to have a ProPack license. If your organization, you want them to use a Plus Pack level of features, they all need to include a Plus Pack license, or you can combine the Plus Pack and the Pro Pack licenses together, but you will only get the Plus Pack feature set. So that's for those of you that are buying something that's a Nebula Flex Pro, which includes the Pro Pack license. You can use that on a Plus organization, but you won't get those extra features unless you upgrade all the devices to a Pro Pack. And then if any of your devices don't have a license, the organization drops back into the base mode. So the base mode, um, and you will have a 15-day window here after a license expires before things drop back. So you'll get notice, hey, your one of your devices licenses is about to expire. Hey, your license has expired, and then hey, you really need to add a new license or else everything's dropping back to the base version. So we'll go through here some scenarios. Hopefully this will make things easier to understand. Hopefully it doesn't make them more confusing. So basically what's happening right now is, everything is a giant pool of licenses. So when this goes live here on April 10th, all of your organization licenses will be converted into individual device licenses, and they will all maintain the same co-termination date. In a couple of rare cases, you may get an extra month of services before the expiration. It has to do with the way we're doing the calculation. If certain days of the month towards the end will get you an extra month worth there. But essentially nothing is going to change. It's just instead of having a one big pool, you will have individual devices. And again, if you have questions, guys, send them in with a Q&A window. I'm seeing a bunch of stuff flashing. I'm not sure if that's hands raised or chat, but if there are questions for me, send them in using the question and answer interface. So this is just showing you here, everything's going. You've got 10 devices on your organization. This is the expiration date. Whoops, that's not what I was, there we go. Let's say now, we'll pretend today is January 1st. Let's say here come June 30th, you decide to add a new device. It's a Nebula Flex device, so it doesn't include any Pro Pack. You will be able to activate it on that site, and you will be given 15 days to add a pro license for that device before the whole organization drops back down into free mode. So you do have that window. So if you want to maintain co-termination or roughly the same expiration date for all your devices, rather than buying a year, you would buy a monthly license, and you would buy a 6-month monthly license. So then everything is expiring at roughly the same time. If you don't add that license, everything after that 15-day grace period, everything will drop to the base version. So same scenario here. In this case, though, instead of adding devices which don't come with Nebula Pro, you're adding devices which include 1 year of Pro Pack out of the box. So that will automatically be activated, but now you'll have 2 different dates of when stuff is going to expire. The original 10 devices are going to expire here on January 1st. The additional devices that you added 6 months later will expire 6 months later. So again, to make this easier to manage, you can simply add 6 months worth of licensing here to bring them both up to expire in the same month. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you'll be given, when these licenses down here on the original 10 expire, you'll get your 15-day grace period. And then if you still don't add any Pro Pack licenses, everything will drop back to the base version. Another thing that has come up is, well, what happens if I've decided my customer doesn't need Pro Pack, they only need the Plus Pack. So one thing you can do is you can preload Plus Pack licenses into your organization, and when the Pro Pack licenses expire, it'll automatically activate the Plus Pack ones. So you don't have to worry about timing that. If you know that's going to happen, you can preload those. And basically the same story for those of you using lifetime licenses. Right now, an organization is defined as lifetime, so there's a pool of licenses. These will simply get converted over into individual licenses. There will be no expiration date on these, so these will still be lifetime. So one thing that's going to be kind of trickier is what happens when I want to add devices to this. In the past, if you were using lifetime licenses, every device on your network had to use lifetime licenses. You couldn't add them. Couldn't add any more devices without first adding a license. So going forward with the new system here, those existing devices will have no expiration date, and you will be able to add other devices onto the network. So those devices, though, will need a Pro Pack license, or they will drop the whole organization back to base tier. Now, those lifetime licenses don't end. So you can always transfer those licenses to a different organization, or if you eventually add their Pro Pack licenses to the new devices, the whole site will jump back to Pro Pack. So hopefully that makes things a little bit clearer for you guys. I know some of those slides, and I'm sure I could have probably explained it a little bit better. So we have a new license that's coming. It's MSP Pack. So the MSP Pack is basically where the current MSP, if you're using Pro Pack, there's an MSP tab. Uh, my experience is very few of you use that MSP Pack tab or MSP tab, but it will be moving over to its own unique license. Unlike the Pro and Plus licenses, it is not tied to a device. The MSP license is tied to an admin account. So it doesn't matter which organizations, whether they're free, whether they're plus, whether they're pro, if you're an admin and you have an MSP license, you will have access to the MSP feature set regardless of what the individual organization is licensed as. So it gets you access to the MSP tab, which gives you an alternative view to sort of look at what's going on with all the different customers that you manage through the Nebula interface. So if you haven't played with it, you can go there and see it. It's a little bit different view than the standard view when you log in that shows you all the organizations you manage. It will give you the ability when you create a new organization to be able to copy settings from an existing organization. So you don't have to configure everything from scratch if you've got another customer that's got similar settings. It will give you access to MSP branding. This is the ability to put your logo in the Nebula interface. And if people go to the support or help tab in the Nebula interface, you can put in your your company's contact information. So your customer contacts you rather than dealing with Zyxel. So that requires this MSP license. We've also got the ability now to create teams or groupings of admins. So if you have the MSP pack, and you work for a company where you've got a large staff, it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to assign people to multiple organizations for management purposes. So you'll be able to go in there and quickly be able to manage, which of your admins has access to which of your customers. Again, something you can do now, but currently you have to do that individually, and this lets you do it by creating teams and then assigning the teams. So for smaller guys out there, probably not a big help. For large MSPs, this is something that we've been having a request for some time. We're also adding a new feature here called cross-org synchronization that allows you to synchronize certain settings between different customers. So this is kind of showing you here the easier user management. You as an admin, you've got access to several customers here. In this case, 2 are the free version. And then over here, you've got one with Plus Pack, one with Pro Pack. And the old way of doing it is you would have to go into each of your organizations and then add your tech support guys one at a time to each of them that you want access to. So with the new MSP license, you're able to create groups and then assign the groups across the different organizations. So it's just a quicker way of doing this. Again, not something that's going to be a big deal for you smaller guys, but for larger MSPs, this may be helpful. So the important thing here is the MSP license is applied to the user account. So generally, you're going to have one of your admins that will have access to these MSP features, and then the rest of your admins will have access to just the standard interface features. But if you do want multiple admins having this feature, each of them is going to need their own MSP license. So that's it as far as the webinar goes, guys. Now we'll turn to your questions. Again, if you have questions, send them in using the question and answer window. So Craig was asking about the ATP 200. So yeah, eventually all of the ATP products will support Nebula. However, it's probably late Q3, Q4 timeline. It's up in the air. So in April, we're adding the USG Flex, and then later in the year, we will add the ATP series. But for now, if you want something more powerful than one of the NSGs, you'll want to go to the USG Flex. And again, we're going to have a program here for upgrades, programs here to transfer licenses. So we'll make it as easy as possible for you to get into a USG Flex. Joe is asking here if the base pack won't be able to schedule firmware upgrades. So right now, the free version of Nebula does have the ability to do scheduling of the firmware updates. The advanced firmware settings that you get with the Plus or Pro pack just give you more granularity. You can go in there and you can say, instead of, I want to update this organization, my organization's all update on this day and time, you can go in there and say, access points upgrade Sunday at 2 a.m., switches upgrade, Wednesdays at 3 a.m. Or you can go in and schedule individual devices. So you can say this switch updates at this day and time, this access point, this specific access point updates at this date and time, all the rest update at this day and time. So it's just more granularity as far as the scheduling goes, is what happens with Plus versus Pro. Dustin here was asking about the cost differences. So let's go ahead and pull up that slide real quick. Ignore the euro sign there on the free version. So here's the differences in the pricing. So most of you are probably purchasing a year up front. So Plus is $11.99 per device. Pro Pack is $29.99 per device with the new licensing scheme. And again, if you go back here to the previous existing licensing, it's a big cost savings over what was the current pricing currently is. RW Sanders is asking cost on the MSP licensing. So the MSP licensing is, I believe, we're targeting around $499 per admin account. So again, usually we would expect you to have just one admin account using these features, whoever the owner of the site is or whoever your head admin is. Since most of these features are only going to be used at account or organization creation or for branding purposes. And again, it applies to that admin account. So as many organizations as you have tied to that admin account will all have the access to the MSP features. So it's not tied to the organization. It's not tied to a device. It's tied to the admin account. Anonymous attendee is asking why USG Flex and ATP. I don't know the reason for it. My guess would be that we needed to choose one of the two to do, and the USG Flex was originally launched with the idea of working with Nebula. So it's always been part of the plan that the USG Flex would get Nebula support. The idea that the ATPs would get support for Nebula is actually something new that we just tacked on fairly recently. That was a decision to make. So it's a completely different code base. So it's going to take time to integrate those features into the ATP features, since we're going to have to go back and revise things. Whereas with USG Flex, a lot of the organization and groundwork in the code was already there. One more question here. Let me see if I understand it. So RW Sanders is, what's the difference between standard one user MSP current, new MSP structure, cost difference? So I think we covered the cost. So right now the MSP tab doesn't have all the same feature sets. It gives you access to, I think, the cloning features currently and that alternate view for viewing your customers. And it's included as part of the Pro Pack currently. So those features will move to this MSP license, and then you'll get those new features. There's also more new features planned for the MSP Pack, but we're not ready to discuss those yet. So going forward, there will be more new features added to MSP. Daniel is asking, when will UTM services move to a monthly license or have that as an option? I don't know the answer to that. My guess would be Tri will cover that, or if he doesn't cover it, he'll be able to answer that when he does his webinar, which will be, I don't know the exact date. It'll be early April. You should be getting an email for it here pretty soon announcing it. That covers the move from the USG Flex to Nebula. Sorry, I don't have the answer off the top of my head, but I believe we're planning monthly licensing for it, but I could be wrong on that. So the prices I'm giving you are in US dollars. I used the slide from the European team, and I just failed to switch all of the designators here from euro to the dollar sign. So sorry about the confusion there. I will have that fixed in time for next week's presentation. Mark is asking to go back to the Plus versus Pro matrix. So let's go ahead and pull that up here. Let's drop that back. So there we go. I'll leave that up here while we answer some of the other questions. There are 2 pages here, but there's not a lot there's nothing for the free version. There's just these 2 dots here for the Plus. Essentially, ProPack is remaining exactly the same as it currently exists, with the exception of the existing 2 MSP features. Oh, and Tri is on, and he's actually asking me questions. Let's see here. So Tri had a good question. What happens if you start with Plus and in 6 months you want to grow Pro? What happens? I believe you simply add the Pro licenses, and the Pro licenses will supersede the existing Plus licenses. RW Sanders has a question about the $500 MSP license. So again, the MSP license is an admin user license. So it unlocks that little extra set of features, and it applies to all of the organizations, all of the sites, all of your customers that admin account is tied to. So you only need to buy one of those licenses and use that one admin account to do everything. That uses the MSP features. Again, the MSP features is just for that slide that we showed with just those what was it, 4 features, 5 features that are tied to the MSP currently. Has nothing to do with base version, the base licenses, the Plus Pack, or the Pro Pack features. So the Plus Pack features you get if you have the Plus licenses, Pro Pack features you get with the Pro licenses, completely separate from those extra features that the MSP license gives you. But yes, it's going to be about $500 for every admin account that you want to have access to those features. So generally you would have just one admin, and he would go and set up those features. It would be the owner account, as we call it now. You would give him the MSP license. So when he generates a new organization, he can clone the existing organization. He can set up and define, the MSP branding if that's something you want to use. So you don't need all of your admins to have the ability to do that. At the moment, the MSP license, it will be, I believe, available for a monthly purchase. I believe we will have a monthly license for it. We also have the ability to set up the MSP license as a demo. So unfortunately, it's not an automatic demo. It's something you'll be able to reach out to your salesperson, and they'll be able to hook you up with it. I believe we are also looking that anybody that currently has a ProPack organization will automatically get a free 1-month demo of the MSP. But I need to confirm that. So that'll be something you can reach out to me directly later. Just Sean R, SHAWNR at Zyxel.com, or through your salesperson. And when we get closer to launch, I'll be able to know for sure exactly how that's going to work. And second page of the matrix here, since Mark was asking for that. James is asking about an upgrade path for the VPN series. I don't think so, at least not as far as Nebula is concerned. There may be a more general upgrade path for that. I don't have the answer to that, and I don't have the easy way to ask that question. But Try would be who to ask that to, or just pop an email to your salesperson and your salesperson can find that out and answer that for you. Oh, here we go. Let's see. No, he's not answering that yet. So Try is on here. So maybe he'll send an answer here for the question about the VPN series. But yes, there is going to be an upgrade path for the NSG line. We will have a trade-in program to get you a discounted access to a USG Flex. There is also the ability to migrate licenses from an NSG to the USG Flex. And Try has confirmed that the security UTM services will have a monthly option. Okay, let me see if there was something in chat. Okay, those have all been answered. Dustin's asking to go back to the first page here, so here we go. So for those of you wondering what this is over here, this is just showing these features, whether they apply to the management interface, to gateways, to switches, or to wireless. So that's what these dots over here are. So kind of think we should just remove that, but it's there for now. So Try, if you're still on, someone was asking about if there's any sort of trade-in or migration path from the VPN series to the USG Flex. So I don't know if you want to send that answer in via the Q&A and I'll read it out if you're still there. I have no more questions. So if you guys are sending something in, here we go. We got one more and we got Try. So let's see here. Try is saying there is going to be a VPN series trade into the USG Flex, but he just wants to point out that it's to a USG Flex with the UTM licenses. So you have to buy the USG Flex. So again, reach out to your salesperson if that's something you're interested in, and they can get you more details of how that's going to work. So that's for the upgrading from a VPN to a USG Flex model. So Michael's asking here, he's saying he's new to Nebula. So it's basically is asking what it is. So yeah, generally we do a once a month presentation where we just do sort of a general overview on what Nebula is. Today's webinar was more focused on existing Nebula users, so they're aware of these changes coming. But yeah, it's a if you've used Meraki, it's very similar to a Meraki type style management system where you log into a website, nebula.zyxel.com. You're able to manage all of your customers and all of your customers' site through a single pane of glass. You configure your access points, your switches, and your gateways through this cloud-based interface. It simplifies things. It makes setup a breeze. You don't have to configure the devices themselves. You simply either manually add the serial number and MAC address to the cloud for each device you want to manage, or you scan a QR code on the box and assign it to your customer and site. And once that device gets onto the internet, it will reach out to the cloud, see it's been assigned to a Nebula account, and it will see the organization and site it's been assigned to, and it will automatically download the configuration as well as update its own firmware and stuff like that. So it's a really good, handy way of doing centralized management. Doesn't require port forwarding, doesn't require VPN connections, doesn't require any of that. Each individual Nebula device has an agent to be able to reach out to the cloud itself securely without needing to configure anything. So it's really nice. I don't think we've got any general Nebula webinars planned for next month in April, but we'll resume those after that. April, we've got presentations talking about the USG Flex migration to Nebula and how that's going to work and some of the features there. And we will have just a general what's new in the Nebula interface later on in the month. And then we'll go back to doing some general Nebula webinars. You can also just go to nebula.zyxel.com, and we have a demo, the demo credentials there on the page. Just log in with the demo credentials, and you can play around with it and see what it looks like. Let's see. Daniel is asking about the ability to migrate settings from local settings to Nebula. No, so that's, I don't believe, going to happen. It's just like the existing Nebula Flex devices. The feature set, the configuration file is different enough between the two different platforms that there is no automatic conversion of settings between standalone mode and cloud managed mode. RW here says for the VPN AP, would that be site VON for multiple devices? So again, tries webinar will be able to handle that a little bit better, but basically it's going to be a VPN for as many devices connect to that AP. And again, you're going to have that AP using the same settings as the Office. So hopefully using an Office, you are using different SSIDs. You've got per user authentication, either using 8021X or using DPPSK, where each user has their own pre-shared key, which then assigns network access over VLANs based on that. But yeah, so technically you would be able to have multiple devices connect and be able to get back to the Office using that SSID. And again, Tri will provide, I think, probably a better explanation of the feature and more in-depth in his webinar early next month. Yeah, and try just to confirm that if you're interested in doing these upgrades, reach out to your salesperson. Yeah, so Michael's here. So we would set up a Nebula account for a company and then add our clients. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So you will set up an account with Nebula. Just go to, again, nebula.zyxel.com. And then you create individual, we call them organizations in the interface. So each organization is essentially your customer. So if you have, 5 customers, you would have 5 different organizations. And then under those organizations, you get to have as many sites as you want. So those can be, physical sites. Your customer has 2 different locations, so you would have 2 different sites. We've seen some people play around with sites as just a way to manage large networks by sort of segregating it for management purposes. So that's how you would set up your initial accounts in Nebula. Then you would add admin accounts. So if you have multiple people who would need to manage these different customers, you do that through the Nebula interface. So you will add your other admins, and then you will be able to choose through granular controls what they have access to. So you can give them access only to certain customers, only to certain sites. You can give them read-only access. There's several different types of tiers. We've got an installer access. So the installer can't configure anything, but the installer can add devices and assign them to customers, add them onto a floor map plan, things like that. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And then if you want, you can even give your customers admin accounts and restrict them to say read-only so they can see what's going on. Hopefully that answers that. We've got a bunch more questions going through here. So according to Tri, there are plans to eventually make it so the USG Flex configuration will sync between standalone and cloud managed, but that won't be available at launch. And yes, the secure Wi-Fi essentially works as a site-to-site VPN, only without the software configuration. So Mark is asking about the MSP license. Is it just to see all customer organizations or is it just for newer feature sets? So you can still see all of your customers and all of your organizations without the MSP license pack. The MSP license gets you access to the MSP view. If you've currently got an organization set up, you can log in to your Nebula account and you will see on the left-hand side an MSP tab. Click that, and that's basically what's moving to the MSP license plus the new features. It's just a different way to visualize what's going on with your customers, sort of an easier way to sort of see them all and see their status than the standard view that you see when you first log in. So you still get to see all your customers, you still get to see all their sites. It's just a different way of seeing that. So again, if you've got a site already set up with ProPack, you can log in and see that, what that looks like. And then it's going to add these newer features, the org cloning and the ability to sync settings between different organizations. Okay, that is it. A $5 button. Yes, yes, it is. But again, the idea behind this is, we based on our metrics, very few people are actually using that MSP tab. In fact, we talk to people about it, and people say, "What MSP tab?" So it's not something most are using. It's generally something that's only being used by really large MSPs. Um, so that's what it's envisioned for. Is for those of you which have hundreds of clients, MSP view at $500 is maybe worth it. If you've got 15, 20 customers you manage, it's probably not worth it. But I'll leave that decision for you. But that looks like that's it for questions. So if you have anything else, just feel free to email me. Again, it's Sean R, SHAWNR at Zyxel.com, or just reach out to Jacob or David Chen. And they can answer those questions for you, or get me involved if they need some help answering those questions. So again, we'll be doing this presentation next Thursday again. So if you have anyone else in your team that you think should see it, and I will use some of these questions and some of this feedback here to sort of revise it a little bit to maybe make some of these points a little bit clearer as we go through the presentation. In early April, Tri will be doing a webinar dedicated to the USG Flex move to Nebula. So he'll talk more about that, talk more about migration, talk more about upgrade plans, talk more about the secure Wi-Fi feature. And then later on in April, I will be doing a presentation which goes over all the other new features or changes that go into Nebula here with this update. So those are all coming. So something else for you to think about joining. So thanks, guys. We'll go ahead and end today's webinar. And this is recorded. It will show up on YouTube under our Zyxel North American channel account. So you can always pull up the video and watch that later. Thank you.